Last week was Halloween, and this week, equally as unnerving, those of us in the United States have a major choice to make on Tuesday. There are those who believe that they have an eternal being telling them how to run their lives, and because of that, they have the right to tell others how to run theirs. Don't believe them. There are those who believe that they get to declare God's rightful candidate or policies, and they have a divine right to make others obey. They are wrong. There is no higher power in control of the election. No matter how it ends up, we are the ones who impact the outcome. We are both free to decide our futures without the interference of some mystical being and responsible for how the future ends up. So no matter what we wake up to on Wednesday, know that the future is up to us. And I, for one, am not giving up. So do you think what I said is damnable heresy? Do you think I should have the right to be a heretic? Give us a call because the show is starting now.
Welcome. It is Sunday, November 3rd, 2024. I am your host, ObjectivelyDan, and joining me today is our very own Sofia Spina for another episode of Talk Heathen. This is a live call-in show, and it is a product of the Atheist Community of Austin, a 501c3 nonprofit organization dedicated to the promotion of atheism, critical thinking, secular humanism, and the separation of religion and government. And we would love to talk to you today if you'd like to talk to us in our damnable heathen ways. The number for that is 512-991-9242, or you can call through your computer at tiny.cc/callth. And again, I'm here with Sofia today. Sofia, what's going on? How's it hanging?
It's going all right.
Yeah. No foreseeable consequences to the future of this country in the nearby, say, next couple days or so, right? No big events or anything. We're a nonprofit organization. Politics don't exist in this space. We're just,
we're just speaking very abstractly about when people need to make decisions, the things that maybe impact their decision making a little bit.
Yeah. Here's our policy statement. People should make informed decisions. That's what we say, I think. Everything's going great, going good. Life is happening at an accelerating rate, and I don't like it. That seems to be the running theme of just being an adult, I guess. But
I also think it's the theme of the last couple months of the year. Like once you hit October, there's just breakneck till January, and then
it's a busy time of year for everybody. But anyway, we already got callers out the gate ready to talk to us. But first, before we do that, we should talk about our Talk Heathen to Me segment, where we got questions that we ask you guys, or prompts that we want you guys to answer in the comments below. And last week we asked, why is God so jealous? Why is he so jealous? And we're going to figure out why from our top three answers here. Number 3 is coming from Belter GLJ, who says, why is God jealous? Because Jesus gets to marry all the nuns. That's true. Did you know this? Did you notice that's a thing?
I think I did at one point know this. I've actually been to I forget the name of the process when nuns officially become nuns, when they're done with their probation nunnery. It is. It's not as fun as a wedding. Not as much alcohol, but yeah.
It's a lot of. Jesus gets a lot of wives out of that scenario. I don't know how people feel about that, but anyway,
I don't know. He spends time with all of them.
Just an observation. Number 2 comes from X Million, who says, God is jealous because even though women cry out his name in the bedroom, he's not who they've chosen to be with, except for the nuns, apparently. But yeah, that's also a great, funny observation. Thank you for that, X Million.
That is.
Number 1 comes from Less Than Lucid, though, who says, why is God jealous? Because humans get free will and God has to pay for it, which is that's a great dad joke that I'm surprised I've never heard of before, but I really like that a lot. He's got free, he got free will and he has to pay for it. That's so funny. I don't know.
Those are good.
It's pretty good. We got some good ones this week. I like that. So thank you guys for giving your answers for this week. The prompt for this next week, though, is going to be, what would a modern day plague be? And don't say COVID, okay? That's obvious. Come on. I want you guys to be creative with this one, okay? So enter your answer below in the comments and we'll read the top 3 answers. But before we move on, Sofia, what would a modern day plague be? What's a good modern day plague?
Christian content farms on TikTok. I think that's a modern day plague.
Oh, you're too real for that. You're too real for that, Sophia.
Dancing and staring into the camera with a Bible verse, thinking it's going to convert you.
Well, for me, it's those TikTok videos where they have like two different things playing at once. You know what I'm talking about? Where they got like a game of Subway Surfers on one thing and then the actual person speaking. It's like, this can't be good for us. That's not great. But yeah, leave your best answers below and we might read yours next week if it's good enough to be in our top 3. So with that, I want to very quickly go to the crew cam that helps make this show happen every single week and thank the folks for working behind the scenes because we always love our crew here. In an upside down view of we're in a Stranger Things world at the Atheist Community of Austin. I have no idea if that's on purpose. Yeah, that's definitely on purpose. That's Vern just fucking around at the studio. Shout out to Vern. It up there. Yeah. That's a good bit. Thanks for that, Vern. But yeah, the crew is the real heroes that help put us on the air for some reason so we can talk for an hour and a half every week. So thank you, crew, for doing that. That being said, at least like I said, Sofia, we got lots of calls ready for us to go. You ready?
I'm ready. I'm as ready as I'm gonna be. What am I gonna do now? So
yeah, let's do it. Let's see. Is there anybody you want to talk to first? I know you got that call queue open because I see a couple good ones.
I feel like I want to be. I'm going for faith in myself right now.
Okay.
Surprise me.
Yeah, I think Jackie. You want to do Jackie?
Sure.
Okay, let's talk to Jackie. Jackie from Mississippi. You are live on Talk Heathen today. What's going on?
Hey, how's it going? I'm doing well. How about you?
Doing well. Again, it's a fine Sunday evening with no immediate consequences for the future of this country coming up in the next few days whatsoever. Everything is great. No anxiety on my end or any of the other hosts or anybody. So it's really fine. Jackie, how about you?
I'm doing pretty good. I don't trick or treat, but I do have a little bit of candy. Not that much.
Fantastic. I would hope you don't trick or treat. I think it's interesting when I had sorry, we're going to tangent here. But Halloween was the other day. There was a couple, and I'm not judging here, but there was a couple that came by with a wagon of like two kids that could not have been older than like 1 year old. And the mom and the dad were dressed up and they came to the door. They had 3 bags that they wanted us to give to. One was for one kid, one was for the other kid, and one was for the adults. And I was like, I'm pretty sure those kids are too old to be even eating candy. And I think you guys are just running a scheme here. But I did go give into their ploy because it's Halloween and we got to get rid of all this candy. But that was a very strange experience. So anyway, I just thought I'd share that. For Halloween. You could have just done
the classic.
Too young.
Yeah, they were like, what? It's like, I don't think you should be giving your 1 year old Kit Kats. Maybe that's just me, but I don't think that's a thing. I don't think you should do that. So I don't know.
Yeah, I think, you just do the play. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Jackie.
Basically, I just wanted to say, so for the argument I would like to present today, I'm going to be presenting St. Thomas Aquinas' argument for the existence of God from degrees. So are either of you guys familiar with this argument, or do I have to rehash the syllogism?
It's been a minute since I've talked about Thomas Aquinas, but for the sake of the audience, it's probably great to give a summary.
So basically, the premise 1 is objects have properties to greater and lesser degrees. Would you agree with that?
How about you just give it to us before
I love Thomas. Yeah. We would. I think it's better instead of asking us if we agree for each premise that you go ahead and give the full argument, and maybe we can talk about it from there.
Okay, so premise 1, objects have properties to less and greater degrees. Premise 2, if there's an object with a lesser degree, there has to be an object with the greatest possible degree. Premise 3 is because there has to be an object with the greatest possible degree, there has to be an object with all greatest possible degree of properties. And premise 4, God must exist because of this, God being defined as something with the greatest possible degrees, or of the greatest possible properties.
What are the greatest possible properties?
So there's things like degrees of goodness. So something very bad, something medium, something really good, and then the greatest possible good is God. So the God is the manifestation of the greatest possible of these properties.
Yeah, I can't believe people were convinced by this back at Aquinas' time, and I'm very confused why people are so convinced by this day. It's a very subjective argument, don't you think, to talk about like what's the greatest degree of good and the greatest degree of all these different properties, and like properties can be a lot of different things. Like it can include things like omnipotence, I guess, but it can also include like invisibility or like, I don't know, who's to say that non-existence is the greatest property? What if God just has the greatest property being non-existence? Like, I don't know. It's very subjective. It's very weird. I don't find it convincing. I don't know. What do you think, Sophia?
Yeah, I think that one, you run into the fact that you're attempting to define things like good outside of the realm of God. So when you say like God is good, that cannot be possible if you're still trying to say like if you're trying to define goodness as outside of God. So we're saying we as humans can understand goodness to a degree, right? And that God, we can apply that to God, essentially, and that we can understand God as being good. But doesn't that mean it's resting on our conception of God? So even if we were to sort of buy into that, it doesn't specify, as ObjectivelyDan said, what these properties are. But if we were to take any particular property, then we're making up our own God by just deciding whatever it is that he would be the most of. And it sort of, as I'm hearing it, feels like God equals just the most stuff. God is the most stuff of all the stuff. And I find that not particularly compelling. We also have an amazing comment from our backup host today, Kelly, who put in the chat that doesn't that imply also there would be greater or lesser gods? That if it's just a rung of beingness, that you would have things that are greater than us and lesser than us. And
well, no, God,
it just feels like it opens into this bizarre and confusing realm of gods are stuff. They are more stuff or less stuff. And we get to define what that stuff is, you know?
Yeah. Go ahead, Jackie.
Do you just disagree with the premise that, if there are degrees of goodness, there would have to be greatest possible goodness?
I don't think we even have the ability to define goodness. So to put degrees into something we don't even have the ability to define is... How would we even move on from there? How do we reason from that point?
The only thing we can define into existence are social constructs. And unless we're arguing that God is a social construct, which I don't think is what you're arguing, and I don't think what people who follow this argument are arguing, it's not very convincing. I can't say that volcanoes exist through these games of definitions, right? Like most people would say that's pretty absurd. So why would I say it could do the same for God? Like it doesn't make sense to me that somehow through this sort of logical, belly button staring, we can just kind of figure out that God exists just by, saying, oh, well, he's the greatest of all possible stuff, because there has to be a greatest of all possible stuff. I just don't find that convincing.
I mean, fair enough, but it's just a matter of definitions. God is defined as that with the most greatness-making qualities. Then, if there's something with the most
according to who
properties, that would have to be God by definition.
And isn't this entire argument just an argument of definitions? So to disagree with us on the premise that our definitions are somehow worse than the definitions in the basic, like in the, I guess, syllogism of Thomas Aquinas, like, okay, I guess we just don't like the same definitions, but it's still not convincing,
Yeah.
Well, so you would disagree that God is traditionally defined by religious people as, the greatest possible being or greatest basis for being?
I would disagree with that. I think we have a lot of different, particularly religions with many different gods, because then they actually have wars with each other. So there isn't sort of an assured outcome. I think even if you're looking at the Old Testament, God seems to rely on human instruments a whole lot, and it doesn't seem like he's capable of doing everything. So no, I don't really get the impression that God is defined as the greatest of all possible beings ever. Or consider even Mormons, where you can become a god of your own planet. So is there a mega god of all the gods, or is it just the god of our planet that we're actually beholden to? So I just don't think that that's true.
This is Thomas Aquinas' understanding of God, but Thomas Aquinas is a medieval philosopher philosopher. They had different ideas about God before the Renaissance, right? Before we had the inspirations of the Greek, ideas of God and putting him into these kinds of syllogisms, right? There were all kinds of ideas of God before Thomas Aquinas decided, okay, I'm gonna make the real best argument, though. So yeah, I don't even think most people in Christian history have followed this, and even those that do have followed, obviously Aquinas being one of the most, if not the most influential Christian theologian of all time, still, you ask the average Christian, hey, what do you think about Thomas Aquinas' case for the existence of God? They're going to stare at you and wonder what the heck you're talking about. I just don't think most people think about God in these kinds of ways. Only academics, and even then a limited sort of those.
I do appreciate, gotta say.
Okay, so I think
Sorry, go ahead.
So it's basically what you're saying is, even if there is a greatest possible being, you would disagree that it would have the attributes that classical theism puts on God?
I'm saying that I can't know anything about his attributes if there is a greatest possible being, just by saying through these kinds of logic games. It doesn't really tell me anything about him. These are just kind of human concepts that we're just kind of throwing around with our words. If in order for me to really know something about a being and its properties and its existence, I have to make observations, and I have to infer through reason, but also through other people's observations, right? And their own conclusions, what kinds of properties that thing has. It can't come from just the mind. Right. That's not how I can really know things, at least things that don't exist as social constructs, as I mentioned. Right. So, yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I mean, that's really all I had to say on that.
I feel like it's kind of like saying, if I can conceive of a unicorn, if I lean into the fact that unicorns exist, doesn't imply there'd be the greatest possible unicorn. It would have every perfect attribute that I could ever give to unicorns. Like, that's totally dependent upon my opinions. If I believe in ghosts, then there's a greatest possible ghost possibly out there.
Yes, exactly.
But those things assume that ghosts or unicorns exist. But the greatest possible being, well, the thing is, we know there are degrees of greatness. So clearly,
how do we know? How do we know that a greatest possible being exists?
Well, clearly, murder is worse than not murder, and clearly,
it's
not.
Murder
is just legally defined. It's just legally permissible killing, so it's a legal concept.
Yes, it's a legal concept. Yes, thank you for saying that. And also, God kills people all the time, right? And also violates human laws on people's deaths, right? So God has committed murder straight up, right? He has violated the states at the time, right? Concepts of what it means to take someone's life away, lawfully or not, right? You can say whether it's justified or not. It wasn't lawful, so there you go, right? So it's not clear to me which one is the other based on that. So
you just disagree that there are degrees of properties?
Basically, unless there's some way to measure them, I guess. I mean, we can say something is smaller than another thing because that's something that we can measure. But I think that you can't. How does one measure greatness without getting into a definition like slap battle?
Yeah, I don't disagree that there are degrees of things. I do disagree on what the heck greatest means. That's always going to be subjective. You know how many greatest hits, how many greatest song charts and stuff are out there, and people are fighting about that stuff all the time. Like nobody can agree on even that stuff, let alone what the heck a greatest being is supposed to be. That's clearly a very subjective thing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I understand. I'll have to consider your argument, and I should probably look into counter arguments about to Aquinas' arguments and degrees. But you do have an interesting perspective about you kind of go circular into your definition.
Yeah, I think that I appreciate the point you make here of looking into counter arguments. That's how I always choose to understand things. If I'm learning an argument, particularly if I get excited about it, if I get really attached to an idea, it's important for me to start looking into people who critique that idea, because I know that I'm getting emotionally invested in this notion and I need something to balance that out. So yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, I like that call, Jackie. Anything else you want to add before we let you go?
Just one final question. So on that question about looking up counter arguments, do you have any recommendations for philosophers, specifically continental philosophers, that you think it would be good for me to read up on?
If we're talking about continental philosophers, I mean, there are lots of responses to Aquinas, but in particular, you're probably going to be more interested in theologians' responses rather than just general continental philosophers. I think like most of the time when we talk about continental philosophy, we're talking about philosophy that's examining other things besides like general theology. I guess Kierkegaard is the first thing that comes to mind. I think that directly references Aquinas. And maybe Nietzsche, but Nietzsche's more interested in Christianity as a whole and not really Aquinas' whole shtick. So yeah, Kierkegaard, go Kierkegaard. There you go. That's my recommendation. All right, we'll let you go now. Thanks, Jackie. Have a good one. Yeah, that was a great call actually, because short, sweet, to the point. He had a point of view. We disagreed. He was like, all right, I'm gonna look into it. That's it. That's the ideal. That is the greatest Talk Heathen call, actually. Hey! Hold on. Wait a minute.
Wait a minute. You know, I'm not a philosopher person as much, so it is fun for me to be like, all right, give me the argument. Let's just go with what comes to mind. And so I appreciate that you do know so much and do have recommendations right off, because I'm like, follow your own logic, see what comes. But that's not really a good recommendation all the time, you know? Yeah,
well, like general philosophers just aren't covering theology as much, because like other theologians are covering theology. And yeah, they do count as philosophers in a way, but that's like a very particular kind of philosopher, right? It's just not the same thing, I guess. Folks who study that kind of stuff. So I don't know. It's interesting, and there's a lot of depth to it. But like Aquinas is like, definitely there's a lot of responses to Aquinas' stuff. There's a lot of Christians today that say, yeah, Aquinas' arguments are like garbage, which I think they're also garbage, you know, to just give perspective there. But I don't count because I'm not a real theologian. So anyway, no, it was a great call. Actually, the greatest of calls. I think if we were to logic our way out of this one, Sofia, and we were to figure out what the greatest of Talk Heathen calls, I think we would point to that call with Jackie just now. So that's my take. Yeah, and I think that I guess I treat it like, you know, greatest in, you know, it hasn't made my heart feel like swell as much, but that's so subjective that if I use that as a method for greatness, like Liesel's heart swell percentage, the anti-grinchiness of a call, I feel like that's a hard one to quantify. So yeah, it makes your heart grow. That's a good, man, that's good meter. We need a meter for that on screen, I think. A good graphic. You know, is this call making Sofia's heart grow? You know, and a little graphic that gets bigger. And you can like change it. Oh, these are ideas. Crew, we need to talk. We need to talk after the show, okay? We need to talk. Let me get this out of the way. I want to talk to you guys about our brick fundraiser. You guys have been hearing about this if you've been watching the last few weeks. We are in phase 2 of our brick fundraiser, and we're giving out some highlights for some of our standout orders we've received. This week's featured brick comes from Rosalind from Virginia. And it is in honor of Dave Warnock. We want to thank you for your purchase. And I did mention this on Truth Wanted. I actually went to Nashville recently because I went to Sidney Davis Jr.'s wedding, shout outs. Nice. And I talked to some folks who are also there in the community because Dave's kind of in the close to that area, and Dave's doing fine. I know a lot of people have asked, how's Dave doing? He's just off the internet right now. He just doesn't want to be on the internet, but he's doing okay. So, you know, any updates that he wants to give, that's his business. But please don't send him messages asking if he's all right, because he gets those every day. And the people that are close to him, they know they're in the loop. So, but he does say thank you, I think, to everyone who has been concerned about him. I think he's getting annoyed. I think he's getting annoyed by all the people messaging him, which I would too, but it's fine. It's out of love. And so thanks to folks who've been keeping up with Dave's situation. With that being said, you can get your own brick if you want to support the ACA and help literally build the building at tiny.cc/ACA bricks for that. Also, another way you can support the show is by becoming a channel member. If you click join below the button, below the video, not below the button. The button is the join button. But anyway, you'll get custom chat emotes, early access to clips and shorts, and you will help perpetuate the mission of Talk Heathen in the Atheist Community of Austin. And what greater mission is that? If we're going to talk about greatest missions, I would say that's the best one. The goat of all missions. Exactly. We will read super chats today, by the way, if you have a question or comment, as long as it's YouTube appropriate. So get those super chats in if you like. And of course, you know, liking and subscribing is also, that's the whole YouTuber thing. You should probably do that if you want to help us out. If you don't want to help us out, don't do those things. But maybe do them anyway. just cause. I don't know. I won't tell you what to do. Last thing before we move on, we do have merch. Okay, so tiny.cc/merch ACA if you want to see the new pins, backpacks, onesies, youth tees, you name it. If you want, to celebrate your little heathens in your life, why not consider it a onesie for Christmas, huh? So anyway, that's all the announcements I think I got right now. Questions, comments, or concerns, Sophia?
I just love that there's onesies. I feel like the dripping bloody letters does feel like giving birth, so that's good. It's really representative of the experience of creating a little heathen.
This is a great gift for your grandma.
Yeah.
Give your grandma a Talk Heathen shirt.
Yeah.
They'll love it.
Yeah, and I know that we have some super chats.
Yeah. You want to read those?
Sure. So first we have Kelly Laughlin, our wonderful backer post today, who's been a member for 2 years, sent $5 and is a cruel, cruel person. Because this is the super chat. I saw Susie sitting in a shoe shine shop. Where she shines, she sits. And where she sits, she shines. Love you both. At least you ended with a love you both.
You did really good, though. You got 90% on that, I think. So
I used to read a lot of like Shakespeare and plays and whatever. And so I like read ahead with my eyes and my mouth usually will get it, but I have to like go into sort of a like blank-minded state to do it.
We were literally practicing tongue twisters before the show, at least I was, and I'm going to try this one right now too. Ready?
Do it.
I saw Susie sitting in a fuck. I already messed up. I saw Susie sitting in a shoe shine shop. Where she shines, she sits, and where she sits, she shines. Okay, I got it at the end there, but damn, that's a hard one. That's a tough one, Kelly. You're evil for that. Anyway, we do have more super chat. Do you want to read the other ones?
Yes. Aliashana Silverbow, I hope I said that right, sent $5. So 360 degrees is a full circle. 720 degrees is 2 full circles. The greatest possible degrees is just going in circles. Hashtag defining God into existence. That is a very good point.
You know what they say? Okay, so there used to be a thing, and this is how you know I'm a dude that grew up in the 2000s. But there used to be a war between Xbox and PlayStation 3. It was a big deal, okay? And people used to say, yeah, when you look at the Xbox 360, it makes you want to turn 360 degrees and walk away, which is like, it doesn't make sense because you would just like turn back and look at the thing. But that was like a thing people said, and that's just what my brain goes to. So that you can tell.
I'm not going to go on a tangent about Love is Blind and how there was sort of a thing about that, but I just want everyone to know I could. I just am letting you all know.
Oh my
I don't know
God.
if that's a threat or what, but
I don't know if that's a threat or not either, but I'm intrigued and scared.
Well, I'm going to go back to the next super chat.
Yes,
from
please do.
Nero, Nirro, who sent $5 and said, so by Thomas Aquinas' argument, does that mean God has the greatest possible degrees of maliciousness and non-existence?
Yeah, I bring up the non-existence thing. I guess they would say maliciousness doesn't count because they have the greatest degrees of good, but then why not have the greatest degrees of malicious? It's like it's very arbitrary. It's very arbitrary. I don't get it.
Yeah, it would also sort of imply that there must be a complete counter God, like a being as powerful as God that is fully evil or fully non-existent.
Right.
So you have like a spider web.
Why not have the least degrees? Right. If the greatest degree exists, why not the least degree?
And just thinking about it's a really cool premise for a fantasy novel, but it doesn't something I really feel like is a compelling argument for belief. And then we have Miranda Rensberger, who we love, member for 6 months, who sent $5 and said, God can't defeat iron chariots. Humans can build iron chariots. Who's greater now? And I imagine like a mic drop here, like, boom, who's greater now?
Yes, that's a deep cut. That's a real thing. Book of Judges, very beginning Book of Judges, they say that the army of people for the Israelites were defeated because of iron chariots, which is the implication that God can't deal with them. And there's a lot of reasoning, there's a lot of study as to why that is, but that's for a different time. So anyway.
And they say atheists don't read the Bible.
Yeah. To be clear, I mean, I haven't really, the only time I read it now is directly in response to people. So I don't know. There is something to be said about that.
I was a great Bible reader at a time. I got a lot of candies for memorizing verses like you did back in the day in Sunday school.
Yeah.
And I remember getting tired of knowing more verses and understanding more of their context than the people leading the groups I was supposed to be a part of. So, that I was a little stuck there after a while.
I knew people that were really into the whole, you got to memorize. If you memorize the whole verse, you get to compete in Bible verse competitions and probably get more candy. And I hated that stuff. I don't know why. That was like the least appealing thing to me. It's just like memorizing it word by word.
And it kind of creates this pedantry that I'm a better Christian because I can throw out more Christian-y sounding things than you. And if you've watched, sorry, go ahead.
You Christian peasants that don't know, can't recite.
Peasants, not peasants.
I know, but like you're creating a peasantry because there is an you're part of the upper class of, well, I know fair. Revelations 20 verse 39 off the top of my head. Can you? I don't know.
I don't know why we become like little riddlers.
I think the Shakespeare thing you mentioned earlier kind of subconsciously infiltrated my brain a little bit. So.
Yeah. I'm a nerd and a dork. I'm all of those epithets. So it happens.
You're beset on all sides by those who. See, now I can't remember the rest because I'm bad at that shit. Anyway, let's keep going. Let's talk to Eduardo, who is calling to us from Brazil. Shout outs to Brazil. Brazil mentioned on stream. What's happening, Eduardo?
Yeah, I'm from Brazil, and what I wanted to talk to you about. By the way, the thing of love being blind, I got a kick out of it because I actually am blind. So.
Oh wow!
So love for you. I guess
yeah. There you go.
I got a hell of a kick out of that. Anyway, so what I would talk about, I would probably be hated by theists and atheists, but it is a philosophy, sort of a hybrid between philosophy and religion that it's called spiritism. I don't know if you ever heard about it.
I don't know that I specifically have, at least not in the way that you're discussing it. So hit us with it.
I'm going to Wikipedia. I see spiritism, which links to espiritismo, which is a term used in Latin America and the Caribbean to refer to the popular belief that evolved and less evolved spirits can affect health, luck, and other aspects of human life. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, somewhat, because there's an oversimplification. So the thing is, spiritism, Allan Kardec, which is the French guy who came up with that, he claims to have the third revelation. But what is extraordinary about his claim is this. He explains away everything, not everything, but all sorts of contradiction, the Bible, the slave holding, the miracles, and he actually says there are no miracles. And there are no miracles because everything that happens is natural. What happened and we didn't know are things that we don't have the scientific knowledge yet. So, for example, Lazarus, he came back from the dead, but he didn't actually came back from the dead. He was I think it's called narcolepsy. People seem to be dead, and then they stay sometimes for days like that.
Yeah.
And people didn't know at the time, so they wrote about So
honestly,
he says that.
Not to interrupt you, Eduardo, but like at least what you're saying so far, that's not super controversial, at least for atheists. I think there are a lot of atheists that explain away stories like that. More broadly, specifically for the Jesus narrative, I don't even account most of those as even being real events. I just don't think a lot of the Bible describes like actual reality. But if you want to go that route and try to explain away like, oh, what really happened with like the Red Sea parting, for example, as some people do, like there are some naturalistic explanations you could point to for sure. So yeah, I don't think you're being that controversial, honestly.
Well, here in Brazil, we are sort of 3% of people who believe that. But the thing is, what it is that everything happened, but we evolve. We as spirits evolve, and the thing that the language that was explained to us is because we were not sufficiently evolved. And people nowadays explain things like, for example, nobody 100 years ago would understand if we explain what an iPhone is.
Yeah.
That we can talk, like, for example, from Brazil to the United States.
Yeah.
So they heard that, and then they wrote it as they understood it. So, and the reason for the evil being together with the good is the question of free will. But interestingly enough, he doesn't think that Adam and Eve existed. What he says that we were exiled. Our people were exiled, and we were. And the angels also, we were somewhat evolved, but we came to this planet that's primitive, and everything it had to be explained. I mean, if God didn't want to take our free will, and that's how it came up. The Bible came up, and some of spiritists they don't even study the Bible, which is not a very good thing in my opinion, because if it's the first revelation, that's the first and the second. So she has a book called The Gospel According to Spiritism, and it explains that, and that's the
okay.
It kind of clicked for me because, yeah.
Well, why did it click for you? Tell me that.
Another thing.
What makes you, what about this ideology or this belief system appeals to you? What makes it convincing to you?
What appeals to me is that it doesn't have an hierarchy. I mean, there are no priests, there are no religious hierarchy. So because we've been reincarnated, because we believe in reincarnation, so it is very possible that a person that is just beginning has more wisdom than somebody who lived their whole life taught by this doctrine, and they not only say that we shouldn't have blind faith, they actually condemn blind faith. They actually says that we are here to improve our intellect and our morality. And the thing is, for example, the part that they say, a good man. I was studying that last week actually, and it's basically we can't. For example, I can't judge you for being an atheist. I can't judge a Muslim for being Muslim. I mean, everybody has the path to go in life. And that's what it clicks to me. That's what it clicked to me.
Okay. I definitely have some thoughts. I don't know, Sofia, if you want to talk, because I have some thoughts.
I mean, I think my initial thought is that, to me, it sounds like there are aspects that feel cool to you, that make sense to you from an emotional level, maybe. And I know that you're mentioning blind faith is bad, but I feel like I don't see any compelling reason to actually believe this. To me, it seems like another angle of, I like this idea. It makes life make sense to me, or makes these aspects of life feel all right. I'm going to choose to believe it. So I still am not getting to any, I am trying to listen carefully to see, like, where is the evidence for this? Is this evidence even come into play here? But it just kind of seems like another one of those beliefs that's just like, nah, I want to believe something. This seems cool. I don't know. What are your thoughts there?
I think. Oh, sorry, you were asking him, not me, probably.
Oh, anybody answer.
Well, I just found out because, like I said, a spiritismo, but that it's actually different thing. This is Cardus' spiritism. I found it because he mentioned the gospel according to spiritism, and that is what this is referring to. So this is a sort of new religious movement that was is most popular in Brazil, which makes sense because you're calling from Brazil. That kind of, I mean, everything seems to match up here with what you're talking about as far as like, okay, there's a different sort of view on traditional Christian theology, but there still definitely is a belief in God. And I'm also seeing some other interesting things here, like the belief that mediums can talk to the dead and stuff like that. So there is still some kind of interesting spiritual element. I guess that's why it's called spiritism. And the thing is, like, I agree with some of your criticisms of traditional Christianity, right? Like there's definitely some better explanations for what we see, for example, and you started off by saying, hey, Lazarus, hey, there's maybe this is explained by a narcoleptic. I agree. I think a naturalist explanation is probably better for some of the stuff we see. But the difference between your beliefs and what my beliefs are is, look, I apply that to the whole of Christianity. I don't even need to believe that there is a God, right? Why do I have to even start with that? It seems like we kind of start with this presumption that, okay, well, maybe some Christians or Muslims or these other people, they have different ideas, they have different interpretations, but let's get to the real stuff. And I kind of say, well, maybe it's all bullshit from the very beginning. Maybe we don't have to look at the real Christianity because maybe there is no real Christianity or real God or real God beliefs around it that are more true than others, because maybe there just isn't a God, right? So that's where I think I start off with this. It's just like, hey, all this stuff is kind of predicated on a God even being there in the first place. And if I can't even get that far, I can't get into this other stuff, right?
Yeah, I got it. And I just wanted to put it out there to see your reaction, because it's not only the United States. I wanted to see what you guys think. But here's the thing. It doesn't bother me that you don't believe, actually. Because,
okay, well, that's good. It shouldn't.
You know,
Yeah.
It's like yeah, of course. That's what I mean. That's exactly what I mean. I'm putting it out there because I have to somewhat wear, not that there are many people here, but somewhat wear a combination of being fluent in English and knowing something about this religion. I just want to put it out there and not only to preach. I'm trying to make you believe that. I'm just trying to make people think about that. You or somebody else. Because if I told you that you should believe, I would be going against my religion.
Yeah, that makes sense. We appreciate that.
I believe that. You know.
We appreciate that. You know, you wanted our takes, you want our reactions. We gave you our reactions, right? There you go. Like I appreciate and respect that you may have more progressive ideas of Christianity, that maybe it includes being more accepting of other people and not trying to preach and do stuff like that. I just think that you don't even have to be a Christian or even be spiritual to even have good values either. Like I just think if it's more about, hey, I like that this belief system's anti-hierarchical and like allows me to live independently and do these things, I think you can do that as an atheist even better than a spiritist, because I don't even need a gospel. You can just do what you want.
Perhaps. But
that's my take, right? So
perhaps, but yeah. But let me just say one last thing. Just one last thing. Like to provoke you guys. Your
provoke
moral,
us.
I mean, the speech is actually the humanist actually comes from the Christian morality, but without God. So maybe you can't believe in God now, but some ancestors of yours had to, because it's only Western society that think about tolerance and things like that. It's starting to come out there, but if you for example, in Japan, up to 1945, they believed the emperor, the live emperor, was a god, so he could do anything.
Yeah. So the idea,
but just think about it.
I think it's hard to provoke people with arguments they've heard again and again. In this instance, the idea that atheist morality is somehow borrowed from specifically Christianity is something that, if you're an atheist, you hear a lot. I think it's pretty easy if you read literature throughout time or global literature. That's where I kind of come to this belief, is that people have had very similar feelings about morality throughout time, throughout the world. We love similarly, we feel pain similarly, and our morality is an outgrowth of the fact that we're a social species. We like to be together, we love each other, and we feel pain. And so there's no need to borrow a particular moral system. You know, you mentioned tolerance being something that was specific to Europe. Well, why is tolerance inherently the only morality that we need to be concerned about? I think equality matters too. And I think you saw a lot of calls in Eastern religions or in oftentimes more indigenous religions that focus on things like sharing, like communal welfare. I think those are good things too, and they don't necessarily come from European styles of Christianity. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think we're open to being provoked, but I think that particular argument is one that's pretty easily dispensed with.
Yeah, I mean, so yeah, a couple things there. One, there is a common misconception that atheism is a Western development and is a Western idea, and that's like a very Eurocentric idea of thinking, because actually it's as old as Indian philosophy. Like Indians have us beat by centuries when it comes to thinking about this stuff, and it's obviously like, you know, we haven't had that produced in like the modern philosophical consensus until like much later, because mostly when we talk about philosophy, it's pretty much always been what white guys thought about somewhere in Europe. So, you know, there's something to consider there, that it's not just a Western idea, right? That it exists by, you know, even by that standards. But if you even want to include like just the broad non-belief, that technically goes back even further than like human civilization, right? Because yeah, there's animism and sort of spiritual beliefs that existed amongst humans, but like there's definitely been groups of people that have no God belief, or at least God in the traditional sense kind of belief. So it definitely exists for a long time. Whether or not that leads you to a better outcome morally is a separate question, right? But the truth is, like, you know, there is a conception that morality stems from Christianity, or Christianity and religious constructs in general are the basis of moral foundations. And you know, we've talked about this time and time again, how it's not true, how we can definitely live lives that are moral and, you know, obviously produce outcomes that are good, most traditionally defined as good. Are they consistent? No, but when has religion ever been consistent, right? Like that's just the matter of being a human being and how you sort that out. So anyway, that's enough, I think, from me. But you did say that was the last thing you want to say. I will let you go here, Eduardo, unless you had anything else you want to add before I let you go.
No, I'm gonna, I'll just say, I'm talking about your specific movement. I mean, I know that atheism comes from long ago and all that, but that's the thing. But we learn that when we don't have tolerance, and actually a lesson that we have to learn by pain, when you don't have tolerance, you start to tolerate genocide and things like that. That's why I say that's the most important moral principle.
I mean, I agree. I don't support genocide. I'm also an atheist, so I don't know what you will do with that. But
no, listen. Sorry. I'm not saying that because you are an atheist. It's not. The provocation that I was going to say is that what led you to the philosophy that you are part today. I'm trying to be careful with my words here. Was I mean, you're specifically your foundation, you know, the secular and church separated from the state, the church separated from the state. It came because because people started questioning Christianism, you know, the Christianity, because, you know, if they, for example, we start to see the Inquisition, and then we go, well, what's that? And
I think
that you don't have.
Let me just clarify. Are you saying that
You are
secularism originates from
I like-
Christianity? I think that's what you're saying, because I disagree with that.
Yeah, but I'm not saying. But I'm not saying that to say that. No, you are wrong. I don't think you might even not be wrong. Might be right about that. But I just think kind of. Okay, I don't know if you and Sofia specifically has that problem. But people don't. Atheists that I talk to don't even acknowledge that. Not even a possibility. I mean, you disagree and all that. But
acknowledge the possibility.
Bother to disagree.
Yeah. So like the idea that if, there can, I guess I'm happy to say that there can be very moral religious people, and I'm a product of the West, and Christianity had a major impact on the West. I think that those are all things that I can absolutely concede. I think that when we're talking about the idea of like morality, I have found that every step I take away from faith and incorporate non-Western Christian traditions, I find myself living more in tune with other people, I find myself living with more integrity the further away I step from it. So I think that it's when it's presented as though we have to have been influenced by Christianity to be moral, and that our morals come from that. I think that that's what people start taking issue with. Additionally, I think when we're talking about on a societal level, things like tolerance, every step toward tolerance has been a step away from the church. Mm-hmm. So I think it's very difficult to say that secularism and that humanism and human rights in general have been something that came from the church, when historically that just isn't true. So I am definitely happy to see that, I'm a product of the West. I have a lot of Christian family members that I consider people who are seeking to do right, and their religion is grounded in European history. Like that's just factually true. It's also factually true that all goodness doesn't come from Christianity.
Yeah, I understand your frustration. I'm going to say this. I'm going to let you go afterwards, because I did say I'd let you give one more thing in. But, you brought up an interesting point, but I think is a common criticism that people have, which is like, look, atheists aren't open-minded. Why can't atheists be open-minded towards the spiritual, towards the God, towards all these other things? And the truth is, I am a product of an attempt at open-mindedness. If I had stayed a Christian, by the way, which is the idea that, you have the truth and the life, right? You don't need these other ideas. I mean, that's Christianity's whole thing, is that, look, don't worship these other gods. Don't follow these other paths. Only follow through me. That's not an act of open-mindedness. If I had stayed a Christian, it is my attempt to circumvent that ideology that I have come to the place that I am today, right? And that's not true for all atheists. Some people grow up broadly secular and don't have God beliefs, and that's fine. But like for many of us, that's our reality and that's our choice. Christianity did not promote ideas of open-mindedness and tolerance and exploration. And I think that is the burden that Christians need to understand, that's what they need to follow, not atheists. It's not atheists that need to be more open-minded. It's the religious folks that grew up in the majority religious nations and the majority religious cultures that they grew up in, that they need to learn tolerance and figure out what other people believe, and not just, hey, I need to figure out what the most people, what a third of the planet believes. I know what they believe. I got that, right? Do they know what I believe though, or don't believe? I think that's a harder question for a lot of Christians to actually answer. And I know that you're a different kind of Christian than most Christians, but that's what we broadly talk about, right? We're talking about the majority consensus. But I am letting you go, Eduardo. So thank you for that call. Another interesting call today, Sofia, on Talk Heathen.
I appreciated it. I now know more about something I didn't. Like, I learned something, which is really cool. I mean, you always like that.
Kardecist spiritism. That's Kardecist with a K.
Yeah.
Did not know anything about this. Big Wikipedia article, though.
Nice.
A lot of things. Yeah. So, very cool. Cool show we're doing today, folks. Thanks for your great, awesome calls. I hope we can keep up this great pace of cool calls and not go into lame calls, right? Because that would suck.
It is better to be cool than lame. Yes,
it is greater to be cool than lame. Therefore, the coolest of calls does exist, and Talk Heathen is is it the coolest of call-in shows?
It's the one I'm
Therefore,
on the
it
most
must
frequently,
exist?
so obviously.
I don't know. There's other cool shows out there.
Yeah,
But
they're
hey,
cool, but not coolest.
who's the greatest? Right.
Yeah.
And if it's the greatest, it has to exist. Right. So anyway, I don't know. We're getting
That
too
means
much
there's
into
a
it.
coolest of all call-in shows.
That's right. And I think maybe we're on it right now. I don't know. But hey, we should do our top 5 patrons for
Yes, we should.
the greatest of call-in shows, I think. Sophia, you want to do top 5?
Sure. All right. Well, I said sure, and now I'm
Hey, you're like, yeah, let me get this shit out. I can do it if you're not ready.
I found it.
Okay.
Sorry.
We're good. We're good.
Consider things before I agree to them. It's a lifelong problem.
I totally get it, because it's like when you're alive and you're like you just start talking just to fill the void, because we can't have no noise going whatsoever. That's crazy. Are you kidding? But yeah, I totally understand.
Yep. All right, I found them. So our top 5 patrons. Number 1, we have Oops, All Singularity, which is just such a good name. 2, we have Dingleberry Jackson. 3 is this is the one I can't think about. I just have to say.
You got this.
Now I have it even less because I'm thinking.
Come on, all that Shakespeare training. Come on, you got this. Yeah, you got it.
Calevi Helvetii. Okay.
Yeah.
I think I just have to go. Yes. The next is Left in the Leaves. And then number 5, we have Neil, the 604 Atheist, with an honorable mention today from Bethany P. That's a good name. That's an easy name to say. Bethany P. This is a normal human name.
Wait, hold on. All of our Oops All I'm pretty sure Oops All Singularity is taking offense. Okay, because I'm sure that's their government name. All right. And you just
with the exclamation point and everything.
How awesome would that be? That'd be sick, actually.
That would be pretty cool.
But anyway, thank you to everybody that donates. You guys are all great. And if you want to be in the top 5 and maybe an honorable mention, you should do that at tiny.cc/patreon.th, or just be a regular patron too. You don't have to be top 5.
Trying to point
we
to
celebrate
down here.
Yeah. There you go. Oh, she's got it. She's pointing to that lower third.
Yeah.
So thanks for doing that. And just a reminder as well, we are going to be doing an after show, and we're having both of us in an after show today. So if you're watching this live, come check out the Discord after show, and that's why we call it the after show, because it's after the show.
Dropping truth bombs here, Objectively Dan. It is objectively after the show.
I'm all about it. So go check that out if you want to hang out with us. But hey, let's get to some more calls for now. We got some good ones. We have 2 Stevens online right now, actually.
Are they even Stevens?
That's a good question. I think I want to talk to Steven from Florida first. Can we do that?
Go for it.
All right. Let's do Steven from Florida. Steven from Florida, you are live on Talk Heathen today. What's going on?
Hey guys, I just wanted to talk a little bit about deconstructing.
Hell yeah.
First of all, just listening to the show today, I wanted to say that the idea that atheists aren't open-minded is not supported throughout history. I mean, we're open to proof. Like my Christian friends ask me a lot, what would change my mind? And I tell them proof. But what would change your mind is nothing, because you've already have your mind made up. And your God, is a substitute for this knowledge, which is something that you'll never surpass, because it always comes to your God and nothing's above that. So the answer will always be that. But during my deconstructing, I wanted to talk about, I feel like I was a worse person when I was a Christian. It's hard to admit, but when you're a Christian, you read things in the Bible like slavery, and then you say, well, I'm going to rationalize this to that was the times back then, and so it was accepted, and therefore these people deserved it because it, you know what I mean? And so you get this just, demonic of way of putting it, way of thinking. This just very evil hierarchy way of thinking that you're better than everybody else simply because you have this imaginary friend who says so. And this book, you know what I mean, tells you that these things. So I wanted to call about deconstructing and just how it changed my life completely. I feel like being human, you can hear things that, you know, contradict what even your beliefs. And instead of just being like, well, my God has an answer for this, or my preacher just hasn't told me what the answer is yet, is not the best way of going. You know, so I like to challenge my Christian friends and even give them their Jesus story. And I like to ask them what tangible evidence, even if we were to say that Jesus died for you and for me and for all of our sins, why are we going to die? Why did our grandparents die? If Jesus died for these people, why are they still experiencing death? Is this a clear sign that even if Jesus did these things, that they weren't accepted from his God? I mean, in the Bible, it even tells you a sacrifice has to be a female offering and a flawless female. Jesus was not a female, and he was not flawless. He was cut up, and the Bible tells you, you know, nailed to a cross. And, you know, a sacrifice is supposed to be in a temple, not on a mount. So there's a bunch of things that you could even argue about Jesus's sacrifice that doesn't even meet biblical, you know, standard.
Yeah. What the greatest red pill you experience as an atheist is when you realize that Christianity is to Judaism what Mormonism is to the general Christian population, which is that Christianity, right? This idea of Jesus being this fulfillment of prophecy and stuff is not obviously what Jews today broadly speak and think of, in the same way that we don't think Joseph Smith is a continuation of writing any of the books of the Bible. Like that's what Jesus was doing to Jewish people at the time, right? Was, hey, here's my interpretation and here's my cult of personality, sort of, you know, turning into this whole other religion. I mean, that's really what it was. But yeah, there's so much to say there about this. Oh my goodness. You bring up a lot of great points. I was also a worse person when I was a Christian, right? I was homophobic. Right. To be honest, didn't really think a whole lot about trans people. There just wasn't as much visibility when I was younger, but I was probably transphobic. If I met a trans person, I'd probably be transphobic towards them. And why? Because I thought I was justified in that. I thought that being gay was a sin, and that God had specific gender rules for people, and then we had to apply by that. That wasn't, you know, yeah, are there atheists that are transphobic and homophobic? Absolutely. But broadly speaking, right, that culture of homophobia and transphobia is fueled by Christianity and Islam and, you know, maybe some minority religions, but Christianity in America, absolutely 100% is where a lot of that's coming from. And I'm not a Christian anymore. So therefore I'm not homophobic anymore, because why? I don't care about God's opinion. I don't think God's real. Right. So there's an interesting thing that happens where I do think I'm a better person because I'm not a Christian anymore. And a lot of people say, well, you don't even know what right and wrong is. And that's gaslighting, because human beings have always, let me say this again, always been the arbiters for right and wrong. I don't care what you think God's opinion is. That's a human being telling you what they think God's opinion is. God has not told me himself, and as far as I know, hasn't directly told anybody. It's always been what human beings have thought of God, and therefore have been human opinions of what's right and wrong. And that means that it's malleable. That means that we can work with it and become better people and figure out what it even means to be a better person, right? So yeah, there's a lot of value that comes with deconstruction, and it's one of the main reasons why I do this shit, because I want other people to experience that and be like, hey, there is a way to not just lose your faith. I'm not interested in losing faith for losing faith's sake. I want people to believe in true things, but I also want people to become better people, and you can do that definitely by shutting off nonsense that comes from beliefs that are religious in nature. Obviously, there you go. There's my TED talk, Sofia.
I love it. Well, and I very strongly identify with a lot of what you were saying, Stephen, and went through a similar process of I was trying to make so many things work when I was Christian. The mental gymnastics I was doing were insane. And I didn't realize that I was doing them until I was thinking, I'm just going to put this down for a little while. I'm just going to take a rest from apologetics, because I was very much an advocate for my faith. And as soon as I did that, I realized how I didn't have to work so hard to try to make something feel true, look true, seem true. And that was sort of the beginning of my road to atheism. Was I was just like, wait, this makes so much more sense. And when I think about, I had a big argument with my grandfather once, who was a very good man, but was a preacher for a long, long time. And the premise is, who is your neighbor? That's something that we're told to love our neighbors as ourselves. And then I see religious people of all stripes, but particularly Christians, and we're in the context of America right now, particularly in America, who go to great lengths to argue that other people are not really their neighbor, that the Bible doesn't really mean those people that I don't prefer or agree with or whatever. And they use the Bible to make that argument. And it's the ability to make an argument based upon your feelings and then believe you have God's divine dictate behind them that makes a person really dangerous and really hurtful and able to do things that just completely disregard the humanity of another. Of course, I wouldn't say no atheist has ever done that, but what I see every day are Christians doing that. And so I fully agree. I think the other thing I would say about when I was Christian was I was so anxious. I had a very hard time thinking about my own morality, being my best self, being my most moral self, because I was thinking about this just this week. If I felt like I had a little bit of a sniffle, should I go to school? That was a middle school question for me. Is it a demon or the devil trying to get me not to go to school? Because if I went to school, would I have the ability to witness for Christ at school? And then, so it means I should push myself to go, right? But what if that's actually the demon talking? And if I stay home, maybe I'll have the ability to witness to a Jehovah's Witness or something at the door, because they sometimes come around. So how can I know? And so I would genuinely spend time trying to figure this out as this kid. And I knew I was never good enough. I knew I was wretched and disgusting and awful. And so when you're thinking about yourself that way, how could you possibly be a moral person? You're just an anxious wreck. And so, anyway, I agree with you very wholeheartedly. And it clearly connects with my own experience quite a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Jesus himself expressed racism and bias by the story we're told when the woman goes to beg for her daughter who's crippled, and Jesus says, it's not right for me to throw scraps to the dogs. I must tend to my own people, the Jews. And so he tells the woman that she's a dog and that she's not a Jewish person. And she answers and says, yes, yes, but even children throw scraps to the dogs sometimes. And then Jesus says, this is a good answer. When you get home, your daughter will be healed. But, it wasn't before this girl had to explain to Jesus that he was a racist. And then the Christians want to be like, praise Jesus, he healed that little girl. And you're like, dude, you know what I mean? You missed the fine reading there, and you just come to the conclusion of your Jesus is the most powerful being.
And she had to kowtow to the personality of Jesus, right? And beg and say, hey, I know I'm not a Jewish person. I'm a Greek woman, right? Is the subtext there? She's not literally saying that, but the subtext there, right, is I'm not a Jewish person, but I still have these needs and desires. And he's like, okay, I'll allow it then, because you kowtowed to me and gave into this terrible metaphor, right? Which that metaphor absolutely in the Bible, right? It says, hey, even the dogs need scraps, right? That's what your mercy is from Jesus, is you are so low you don't even get to sit at the table with him. You're the dog underneath the table. Yeah, it's a truly horrifying passage when you read it with a fuller context. Something I never understood as a Christian, because why would you celebrate that, right? But it's true. When you read the Bible with a broader understanding, terrible things come up.
even their hymns, Amazing Grace, A Wretch Like Me. I mean, the Bible calls them sheep. I mean, like it's very degrading to, and especially if you're a female, to call yourself, a person of faith. In the Middle East, you're killed if you don't. But in America, you have the choice not to follow that, And I say to my friends all the time, a female in the southern states must have a really hard time figuring out what parts of her body belong to the government and what parts of her body belong to their husbands. And so, you know what I mean? And so like, it's really ridiculous to me, but like, as I'm learning these things, I'm trying not to let, what was pushed upon me my whole life, to get in the way of truth and facts. I'm trying to, see this now that, I was the same way as you. I just don't have any trans people or LGBT people in my life. But now that I'm opening my eyes to this, where I was homophobic to them, I realize that they need a voice as well. And, and I start regretting all the years that, I felt justified in pure hatred, and now that I see that what I was so afraid of this whole time was actually what I thought I believed in, this love and compassion, was actually what I was fighting against and trying to hide from, and saying that I was more justified than that.
Yeah. I mean, we were joking about having a Grinch-o-meter where your like heart grows earlier. And I'm like, I feel like this is one of those for me where I fully agree that I was homophobic too. It's interesting that this is sort of, this seems universal amongst the three of us anyway, that there were people that I thought that because God could love me as a sinner, I could pull the God, the love the sinner, hate the sin line. Right. And I wasn't just saying, I actually just hate this big part of you and this big part of your identity, because that's really what it is. You can't just pick and choose the things in a person that you love. And I think I've been speaking with a friend of mine who is a religious person and is a lovely person. And every time she brings up faith, she talks about how disgusting and terrible she is and how God loves her in spite of her flaws. When every time she talks about it, it really sounds like God hates her. And that's the way that you're taught to believe. And I think you're right. Oftentimes, particularly as a woman, you can't even trust your own self.
Yeah. Yeah. If we saw the figure of Jesus as depicted in the Gospels, particularly in the Gospel of John, but in all the Gospels today, if we met that person, we would very easily say, this is a cult leader, this is a manipulative cult leader, right? Who does the tactics that cult leaders do today. They make you feel like shit and say, hey, you're not good enough for my love, and make you try to earn that. And as we know today, as popular psychology has taught us about toxic relationships and toxic people, right? Like, hey, there are signs to avoid. There are red flags in people, and Jesus absolutely displays that. And Christianity as a whole displays that in their typified relationships with human beings to God, right? There's a million examples of this. We already talked about this, and part of that, a subcategory that is women's subservience to men as well, which is just an extra layer of bullshit that gets wrapped up in all of this. So, Stephen, I hear you, and you are heard here because again, this is why I do what I do personally, because for stories like yours, because I think that this is an act of liberation for both of us, for all three of us, right? It's not just about winning a debate whether God or not exists at the end of the day. I'm less interested in that. I'm more interested in what this can do for people, right? Like, yeah, God's not real. That's true, and that's fair. But like, it's more than that. If it was just that, I don't think I would care about this as much. Look how much your life has changed since you've deconstructed these beliefs. Look how much Sofia's life has changed and my life has changed. It's a life-changing event, and it's for the better, I would argue. The Christians would say no, but I say no, it is for the better, because obviously you see the growth in yourself. I've seen the change, and that's what I want for other people. personally, and that's why I talk about this stuff. But anyway, thanks for that call, Stephen.
You said it. You said it perfectly, and I just want to say it is life changing when you go from waking up every day thinking you know everything to you know nothing, and you want to learn something that day. And so I'm going to keep deconstructing. I just wanted to say that in my own personal experience, I have found that I was a much worse person when I was a Christian, when I thought that when I was justified, than I am today, wanting to be the things that I thought I was standing up for when I was a Christian.
Absolutely. Amen. Amen, Stephen. Amen.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony. Yeah. Thank you for your witness testimony today. We appreciate that.
Yeah.
The congregation here, we love that.
Yeah,
we love that.
Yeah. I was just thinking oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Stephen. Oh, I think he went ahead and dropped off there. But thank you, Stephen. Thank you so much for that call. That was wonderful, honestly. It's really good.
Some really lovely calls today, actually.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
The greatest calls for the greatest show, I think.
The Grinch meter is now involved, and we got there. It was my goodness, something that I was thinking about when he mentioned too, just being a woman in a southern state. I am in Texas, and some people were really confused as to why I moved here. And I've now gone through 2 pregnancies in Texas, and both have been kind of terrifying when you think about who owns me, and that's a question that some people would find legitimate and think that they could answer. That's pretty bizarre that people can think they can own me and own, my decisions. This week, a lot of folks are talking about how I believe the quote that came out was to the effect that if you vote differently than your husband, it's like cheating on him. And of course, though, I have to wonder what they would do in my situation where my husband is not an American citizen. So I guess is that inherently? Anyway, never mind. I don't really have a conclusion to that, but I was just sort of curious about what the recommendation for that would be. So. Yeah,
I don't know. Most people don't have these things too thought out, in my experience. So we're just I don't know. That's why we're here, I guess, so we can think it out. But anyway, we have at least 2 more calls I want to try to get to before the end here. And let's just jump to them right away, because the other one, we have the other Stephen who's been waiting for a while, so I want to get to them first. We got Stephen from New York who wants to talk to us. So Stephen, you are live on Talking Heathen. What's going on?
First of all, my mouth is a little dry, so please bear with me. But Satanism is very antagonistic, and I think Christians need more respect.
Christians need more respect from Satanists?
Satanists could be very hostile. And also I have an analogy about why Satanism doesn't work.
Okay, well, let's one thing at a time. Why do Satanists need to give more respect to Christians?
I just think it's rather mature if they wave pentagrams at Christians and kind of harass them. I think it's not. I'm not even a Christian, but I think they deserve more respect.
Well, can you give me an example? Because when are they waving pentagrams in Christian spaces? If there is one, I want to know, but I'm just not aware of that happening.
I mean, I've seen Satanists be really rude to Christians, and I have an example of why it would be rude. For example, I remember you were talking about Resident Evil 4 another day. I like that also. That has scary Spaniard villagers and the Los Illuminados cult. Just because I like that doesn't mean I would go up to someone who is afraid of ghosts, let's say, and I wouldn't go up to them in a magenta or violet cloak and try to scare them and be disrespectful to them.
I agree. I don't know if this is a thing that's happening in reality, right? Like, okay, so the Satanist organizations that I'm aware of, broadly what they do, and I'm not a Satanist, by the way, so you probably should be complaining to the Satanists and not maybe me and Sofia. But broadly, right, like they are filing lawsuits and they are, putting in claims for just stuff that broadly involves religious freedom. Like, I'm trying to think of specific stuff, like when they say that there's going to be after school clubs or whatever, and they want to add religious after school clubs, then they'll be like, okay, we're going to make a Satanist after school club. Or if there's going to be, plaques that honor, have like a cross on, a government property or a school campus, they're going to be like, okay, we're going to make a Satanist plaque, right? And it's just more to make a point, right? It's like to kind of show like, hey, we exist too, and there's other religious groups that exist beyond Christianity, and oftentimes these policies that are supposed to be allegedly for religious freedom are really to further a Christian hegemony, right? To further a Christian agenda. So and politically, that's the kind of actions I see from Satanists. Can they be like pretentious? I mean, that's a matter of opinion, but I don't know of any Satanists that are like going up to Christians' faces with pentagrams or whatever. Like, that's not what I'm aware of. Maybe you know of some examples, and I'd love to hear that. But like, that's my understanding of like politically what Satanists have been doing in America for a minute.
I think I would also sort of throw in there that it's hard to make these generalizations about a group that is in the dramatic minority. So when we think about Satanist activists, and I'm not a Satanist either, so there might be a Satanist out there like yelling at their screen because whatever I'm going to say is going to be wrong, but I'll do my best. When I think about kind of their activism, it's if they were polite about it sometimes, if people are just like, well, if it's okay with everybody, we would like you to not put the 10 Commandments in the courthouse, things like that. Sometimes I think these dramatic actions are done in order to even have a fighting chance, to even be heard or seen, because I think oftentimes people who have tried polite tactics, who have tried to say, hey, just let me live how I want to live, that hasn't really been met with any response. It's very easy to steamroll someone if they are searching for that consensus. Like, interpersonally, I agree with you. Like, I think that if somebody disagrees with you and you're just like, I'm gonna be a jerk about it, don't do that. On this show, I respond to things differently than maybe I do in real life. If someone has a faith and they don't want to necessarily discuss it with me, that's not something that I'm going to just venture into. And if it feels like they're just wanting to say what they believe and aren't there for an argument, like that's fine. But when it comes to these questions of rights for other citizens, I kind of get the antagonistic approach, even if it's not one I personally would take.
Yeah. Are they trolling sometimes? A little bit. Yeah. Oh, totally. I'll give you that. Sure. But it's like, I don't know. Is it rude though? Like, how rude is it? Is it any more rude than putting, like you gave the example, right? 10 Commandments. Is it rude to put a Baphomet statue up? Is it any more rude than having a 10 Commandments statue up? I don't know. That's a matter of opinion, I guess.
I think it takes away serenity because they're pretending to be Satanists. They're not really. They don't really believe in Satan. So it's not a real religion like other religions. Other religions, even though they may need to understand that church and state separation is needed, they're not doing something on purpose to be rude to others. But Satanists are. I think it's basically just a word game. That's basically what it is.
Well, all religion. First of all, let's put a pin in that, okay? Because I don't know if you can tell the Satanists what their religion is or isn't. I think that's up to them. In the same way that, by the way, I pull this both ways. If a Christian, if somebody tells me I don't believe in God and I'm a Christian, I still accept that they're a Christian. right? Because that's their self-identity. So I don't care. I don't give a shit. If that's what they identify, that's what they identify as. But we can point to common denominators there. So yeah, broadly speaking, most Satanists, at least that I know of, don't literally believe in Satan as a figure. That doesn't matter. That doesn't mean that their religion's not a religion, right? Because religion is more than just a God belief or a deity belief. It's also ideology, right? And so they fulfill that ideology to a T when they're putting Baphomet statues up. Okay, I don't care if you don't think so. They definitely do. That's definitely part of the religion, and that's what they follow through. So this idea that they don't count because they don't actually believe in a real figure, that's not the point, right? There's a little bit more to it than that, I think.
I would also throw in there that it's a very strange expectation to think that if something doesn't seem like a religion, they should pay homage or respect to something that is a religion in our viewpoint. That's a really bizarre expectation. I mean, they could entirely come out and be like, all of this is fake. We're just doing it for the human rights standpoint. I still don't think that's a reason for them to behave a particular way or to privilege Christianity because they aren't just trolling. I don't see why that would be the case.
Yeah. Generally speaking, it isn't just trolling, right? There's a little bit of trolling. Okay,
yeah, you're right.
They're trolling
I'm just sort of putting it into that.
But there is a bigger point, right? There is a sort of larger sort of ideological framework that they're working under in point that's being made with a lot of these sort of political sort of statements and stunts that a lot of the Satanist groups done. So it's not just for nothing. It's not just to piss people off, but it is a little bit. I think they'd be lying if people were like, yeah, it's kind of fun to piss people off. So yeah. I don't know. But yeah, it doesn't work with civility politics, Stephen, if that's your point. So
I would say where there's a will, there's a way. If there's like a problem with church and state separation occurring, then you know they could talk about it instead of acting in this strange way and kind of
I'm going to disagree. Do you know why the reason why evolution is taught in schools is because a teacher made a stink about it, right? Sometimes you have to make a stink about it in order for things to make a change, right? Madeleine Murray O'Hair, for example, founder of American Atheists, made a huge stink about a lot of stuff. And she, of course, was notorious for the stink that she made. But if she hadn't made the stink that she made, American Atheists wouldn't be a thing and wouldn't be doing stuff, right? So you kind of have to make a stink sometimes. Is it pissing people off? Yeah, but it has to be done in order for change to happen sometimes. So I don't know. I disagree with that notion that, well, we all have to play nice all the time. You know? I
think that I've heard a lot of nice people tell me that I shouldn't have access to things like quite a few different kinds of birth control, quite a few different, like there's, I think as a person of the lady persuasion, getting this idea that if you aren't offensive, then people will listen to you. I can tell you that has never been the case in my entire life. No matter how sweet a gentleman may be, they just don't necessarily understand your experience until you present it to them. And sometimes they're not ready to listen. So making a stink, making a fuss, making it so other people have to see and hear you, sometimes that does become necessary. It's people, you're saying where there's a will, there's a way. Maybe this is the way. And I think the other thing I would say is, great, if you don't believe in that kind of activism, don't do it. But then do it a different way yourself. Like I said, I personally don't attack the people of faith for, unless they want to have some kind of discussion. And even then, I don't think I'm attacking. But I really can't tell people who feel like their rights are at stake not to make a big fuss about it,
See, we gotta let you go because I want to take at least one other call before we go. But anything else you want to add before we let you go?
Yeah, I still think you get more views with honey than with vinegar. I kind of disagree with.
All right. Well, here's my response to that, Stephen. How did you find the Atheist Community of Austin? Was it from Matt Dillahunty being nice and sweet to some of these callers, or was it from Matt like ripping into somebody?
Being aggressive, but
there you go.
Yeah.
Then that makes a difference, right? Kind of makes a difference, just a little bit. Stephen, I'll let you go now, but And again, I use Matt because most people probably find our stuff through Matt. Matt's probably the most popular host. I mean, is the most popular host that's ever been part of the Atheist Community of Austin, right? But it's like, yeah, that's, if you look at our top 10 clips, I'm sorry, it's not us saying, oh, good job, caller, you're doing great. It's people being just a little snarky.
I think I also would point out that it's pretty funny to be like, yeah, like I have tried to advocate for myself politely and people just fully ignore me. And he's like, no. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know what I'm supposed to say to that other than like, I guess you're not going to advocate for anybody. Like, it just doesn't feel like there's, if you want everyone to be polite, I guess that's just not going to be I can't rely on you for advocacy, full stop, because that's not always how it goes.
Yeah. Yeah. And aggression for aggression's sake isn't great either. I'm not saying that, but I don't think the Satanists are doing that. Maybe some of them are. I don't know all of their hearts, but from the ones I've talked to and from the interviews I've seen from people, it's people who are generally fighting for something larger than themselves, right? Fighting for a principle that they believe in. And the way to do that is to ruffle some feathers sometimes. That's why people find activists annoying, because we tend to 100%. Ruffle people's feathers and shit.
Well, and we could also be very easily characterized as being mean to people of faith. Our very existence as atheists in public can be characterized similarly to how atheists or Satanists were being characterized in that case. So I guess kind of shrug, like people can say that about me too. I think they would be wrong, but they could say it.
Yeah, I agree. I still want to take this one other call that we have in the queue here. I know we're like at the end of the show, but like I think it's a really interesting one. So I want to just jump right to it. So let's do this. We got D calling in from Iowa. D, you were live on Talk Heathen. Give us your take here. You're telling us that atheists need to be more tolerant of those within our own ranks that still hold on to spiritual beliefs. I'd love for you to expound on that.
Hi guys. Thanks for taking my call. Can I just say first a couple of things about Stephen just now?
I mean, I normally I'd say yes. We are at the tail end of your show. If you can keep your comments to 30 seconds or under, then yes.
I can. Respect is earned. That's all I'll say.
Okay. All right. That was under 30 seconds. Good job.
Well done.
You did it.
No, he said Satanists should be more respectful. Well, I say respect is earned.
All right. We're doing some Shakespeare stuff today. Amazing. Little quips. Sorry, D, go ahead.
No. Anyway, what I wanted to say is that deconversion is a process. Some people take a while, and their beliefs and their views and their mindsets change over time, and that's where I'm coming from. I started out as a charismatic fundamentalist. I left the church, so I quote unquote practiced Christianity on my own, kind of like a solitary Wiccan sort of thing. And then I pivoted from Christianity to a general spirituality and so on and so forth until I find myself now being a secular Buddhist. And that took me literal decades to get to. And a lot of us are still on that gradual path. We are evolving. And I'm not going to go into it, but I still hold a couple of very personal spiritual type beliefs.
Sure.
I think that I'm with you guys that I want to be a force for bringing the truth into the world and freeing people and helping them heal from religious trauma. I think that we all have a part to play. And I would really like to see some people, well, I guess we're talking about respect, have a little more respect for the journey that each individual is taking. Like I had one host tell me, yeah, sure, spirituality is fine. You know, like if you're a heroin addict going through withdrawals, then giving you some heroin occasionally through the process is okay. And I had to think about that for a couple of weeks, because I thought, maybe for some people that might be true, but it wasn't true personally for me. So I was just kind of wondering what you guys think about all that.
This is a tough one, and very much related to what we were just talking about. So I think if you've seen my track record as a host, if anything, I have tried my best to rein in other hosts when I can. When I say, hey, hold on, we need to take a step back here, because we can quibble about little stuff all day, but you're absolutely right. Deconstruction, and I like the term deconstruction better than deconversion, because it is when you're deconstructing, there's bits that come in that process. It doesn't happen all at once, right? And that was true for me. That's true for a lot of us that go through that process. It's easy to forget for many of us. The truth is, it happens a day at a time. Usually doesn't happen all at once. And in that, there could be people who find your other parts of your beliefs still disagreeable and just want to just tear it all out, right? And just want to just rip, just like a Band-Aid, just rip it all off. And there are some people that say that needs to happen. I'm not one of those people that necessarily says that, because I think the problem is religious belief is also a philosophical one. It's also a social belief, right? It's also a psychological one. And you can't just do that with people. Unfortunately, it doesn't work. Even if in the most ideal circumstances, people can't just change the entire way they've been living their life in a single conversation because they had a debate with somebody online. It just doesn't work like that. So when it comes to respecting the process, I agree in respecting the process. I don't respect the beliefs. I'm still going to say, hey, your belief is homophobic if you're being homophobic, right? And saying you're participating in a culture of homophobia. If somebody, for example, was to do something like that, right? Even if they're deconstructing, even if they're going through that process, again, I respect that, but I also have to be firm and say, hey, this still isn't right, right? And that's just one example, but the point is, like, you have to still be consistent, even when talking with folks who are deconstructing stuff, because you can still deconstruct and kind of stop. Like, there may be some stuff you still leave untouched, right? Just because you're deconstructing some stuff doesn't mean you're deconstructing everything. It tends to happen. Most folks that do go deconstruction tend to also look at their political beliefs and stuff, but there are definitely some, and I know this because I know atheists, for example, who do have some bias with people who are gay, for example. Like that's a thing I've encountered. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you're absolutely enlightened just because you have some stuff you agree with. So anyway, I guess I'm trying to say I hear you. I absolutely hear you, and I definitely have always tried, at least in my position as a host, try to respect people's journey as much as I can, as much as is tolerable to me. And I also got to lay down the line sometimes too, because I can't just let people say, oh, well, they're going on the thing and we don't have to call some stuff out. I got to call stuff out when I call it out. It's more just like, I don't know, it's the social navigating that we all experience every day when we talk to other people, right? When's the best way to approach something? I don't know. We all have to kind of figure it out on a day by day or a call by call basis in my case. But for most people, it's just a day by day conversations. Anyway, that's my take there. I've been talking a lot. Sophia, what do you think?
Yeah, so I think I fundamentally agree with you in the sense that, I do value kindness. I think being kind to people as often as you can, viewing things from their perspective so you can, treat them how you'd want to be treated. Like, I think that's important. I also think it's important for us to consider what we're really responding to when we're talking to someone. And if you're an atheist and you're getting really irate or having really, as I would say to my kid, big feelings about something, it might not be feelings about the person in front of you actually arguing for religion. It might be feelings that you're dealing with about coming from religion. And I think that that's important to recognize. I think there is a part of me that does want to put out there that, well, I definitely attempt to be respectful when I'm with folks. Sometimes I get really emotionally tired of having to be this ideal atheist, because I know I'm predominantly surrounded by Christians, and I know that anything I say is going to be seen as how atheists act. And so it can become a lot. It can become, you're just sort of holding things in so you can nurture people who are part of the vast majority, many of whom are seeking to take away rights from you. That I know you're not suggesting that. I'm just wanting to acknowledge that that's really hard to do. And there are times when I want to lash out and be like, this is all bullshit. And you don't get to tell me what to do because of your bullshit. That's and that's there too. Like, I agree with you. And I think maybe my take would be atheists need to find a place to release as well, so that they can treat others respectfully. Because if I didn't have ways to have some catharsis with that, I think I would struggle more than I do. And it's still a struggle.
Yeah. If there's one thing I've been saying for years at this point, and I always say this, is you can be right and you can be convincing, but those are two different things at the end of the day. Right. So do with that as you will. But I think that's everything I want to say about that. Any other thoughts you want to share with us on that, T?
Yeah, and you're talking about people who maybe atheists, but they're still like homophobic or misogynist or like that's not what I'm talking about. I mean, if somebody, if somebody comes across homophobic or misogynist, definitely you got to call them out on it, but you don't have to call them out on it in reference to their beliefs. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but I hear what you're saying. But like Eduardo, for example, we talked to him earlier, who was had probably some more progressive understandings of his religion and other people's religion. He was very kind to us. He thought, I don't have to. He explicitly said, it's okay that we don't believe in God. Thank goodness we got Eduardo's permission for that. But it's like, hey, I'm still gonna tell Eduardo, hey, I still think the whole God thing is dumb, right? Like I'll say dumb. I didn't say dumb. More just I don't think it's worth investing belief in, right? Like, yeah, he's agreed with me on a lot of stuff, but like, hey, I'll help him get the rest of the way there. I don't think just because, yeah, he does win some points with me because, okay, he agrees with me on some stuff, that doesn't just mean I get to just say, oh, well, Eduardo, I guess, maybe we can all agree to different things, and you can have your belief system, which tells you that mediums can contact the dead and we can have seances and stuff, right? Which is apparently a thing. That's a part of a system, according to Wikipedia. So I don't know. I don't know if that gives us license to just kind of be like, okay, everybody can just do what they want now because we got some level of tolerance, right? But that's the debate of our time. I think a lot of smarter people have talked about that concept more than me. I don't know, D. What do you think?
I do. Yeah, no, I really appreciate you guys' views, and I do have some other things to say that I think I'll save that for the Discord.
Okay, sounds good. That's a great segue. Great segue, G. Thank you. Thank you for giving us that. I will let you go now because we are at the tail end of today's show. But as D mentioned, we are doing an after show right now. Well, not right now, but like in a few minutes now. So tiny.cc/HND Discord. If you are watching this live, come hang out because we're both going to be there. And Kelly's going to be there too. Shout outs to Kelly Laughlin, who's been our backup host today. If we could maybe get him on the screen. There he is. Look, he's got that scarlet letter on today. He's feeling fancy.
Gorgeous tie too.
Yeah. Dan, you mentioned that like atheistic belief goes back pretty far. And I have to do this because somebody in chat said I knew everything. So about 300 BCE in Greece, the philosopher Pyrrhus started some atheist philosophy. And if you want to go a couple hundred years past that to about 600, 500 BCE, and I'm hoping I pronounce this right, Brihaspati was an Indian philosopher who started the school of Charvaka, which is very much like modern atheism.
Yeah. Not even the only atheist philosopher in India. Actually, there's a couple people that talked about it. There you go. Oh. Kelly does know everything. Thank you, Kelly. Infinite wellspring of knowledge, sir. We will see you in the Discord in just a second. And before we get going here too, I have to remind you guys, what would a modern day plague be? And give it to us in the comment section, please, so that we can read the best answers, the greatest answers next week on next week's program.
And real quick before we go, we have a super chat that we haven't said yet.
Thanks for that. Can you read that for us?
Yes. We have Robin Hoodsta, who sent us $5 Canadian, which I just find fun to like specify. Hi, I am an atheist, and I just watched Christspiracy or Christspiracy.
Yeah,
I'm
I guess it's
guessing it's probably how it's said.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and I recommend everyone to watch it. It exposes religion for the animal sacrificing cult that it is. Woof, that is some incendiary language.
It sounds like some hot takes happening on that little program. Yeah, cool. I haven't heard of that, but maybe it's cool. I don't know. I can't say it's cool or not because I haven't seen it. But thanks for the shout out. Maybe I'll check that out. Let's do some love rings. Actually, we got to do some love rings at the end of the show. You ready for this? Charge your magnets and your geodes together. Get ready for this. Kamehameha. There we go. Okay, we got it.
I've been trying to do the Gen Z heart, but I'm not very good at it.
Yeah, this whole thing.
I'm too millennial. I don't quite get it. Is it this way?
Your skinny jeans are preventing you from being able to.
The skinny jeans are affecting my brain.
Yeah, exactly. That's awesome. Well, yeah, those love rings are out there for the folks who are joining us in this community. And let's go ahead and give that sign off now, if you don't mind, Sophia. If you don't believe, this is your community, and we appreciate you being here. And if you do believe, we don't hate you.
We're just not convinced.
Sayonara, everybody. We'll see you later.
We want the truth, so watch Truth Wanted live, Friday at 7 p.m. Central. Visit tiny.cc/YTTW and call into the show at 512-991-9242 or connect to the show online at tiny.cc/calltw.